Mickey 17 is the latest Bong Joon Ho film, so today let's rank all of his movies from worst to best. Hey everybody, my name is Justin. All I do here is watch movies, and I'm very excited to talk about Bong Joon Ho's films. I just recently watched every single one of his movies, and I could see why he's such a critically acclaimed director. Leave your list down below. How would you rank all 8 of his films, including the newest one, Mickey 17? Coming in last place, Barking Dogs Never Bite. This is his directorial debut. This is in last place, but I still really like this movie. What he starts to accomplish later in his career when it comes to some of his underlying messages is very apparent within this film. It intertwines 2 different storylines, one of a man that's inconvenienced by barking dogs within this film. In the beginning of the film, it states that no dogs were harmed within this movie, but there is moments where dogs are being hurt. He doesn't like when the dogs are barking. Then you have a woman who notices that dogs are starting to go missing and their storylines intertwine. What makes this film more mildly funny is the fact that his wife gets a dog and that dog goes missing and he has to try to find that dog despite absolutely hating dogs that bark. But Bong Joon Ho was able to take a film that would have a more darker storyline to it and implement a jazz score alongside this film to ease some of the chaos within this movie. It is also quite funny throughout this film despite its subject matter. I didn't really anticipate this movie to be as funny with its imagery and some of the situations among the characters. You have typical Bong Joon Ho messages within this film, and it's a nice setup for its characters and the overall premise of the film. The beginning moves a little bit slow at times, and it isn't until like the middle half to where you have the progression, more of that storyline to come out with him and his dog that has gone missing. But I found it to be funny at times, but also a bit dark. But as a directorial debut, it works. Coming in number 7, Okja. This is one of his most recent films. It was on Netflix. Has some really crazy performances from Jake Gyllenhaal within this film. And one thing that Bong Joon Ho has to do so well within this film is establish that relationship between Okja, this super pig, and the young girl that is watching over him. And he succeeds at just that. He succeeds in giving us a genuine relationship between the two, which makes the rest of the film very hard to watch when the super pig is being presented to the public and realizing what the overall outcome of that super pig is. And so it's hard to watch that relationship kind of fall apart at the end, and it makes it way more emotional. You have deeper themes of animal cruelty and consumerism that Bong Joon Ho is implementing so well within this film. It's the middle half of the film where it starts to fall apart. The beginning has that really nice setup of that relationship, and it all pays off at the end when you try to protect Okja. It's that middle half of the film that starts to lose its pacing and becomes a bit of a problem throughout, but I still think it is a solid emotional film that has its ending that is very strong because of its initial setup. Coming in number 6, Mickey 17. His newest film takes a very complex storyline of a person that dies. He's being tested. He is now can be copied, and he lives on this ice planet, and he's being used to be tested and put on these more dangerous missions, but his memories, everything's intact, and he can be printed again. Has a really nice setup of this character and his purpose of being on this ice planet. And then it's where that middle half is where you start to bring in the multiple, and you have Robert Pattinson giving 2 different performances, but it takes on a little bit too much at the end of the film. Certain moments feel like it's in line with Okja when you look at these animals. It feels a little bit chaotic with its script. Mark Ruffalo also gives a really over-the-top performance. So does Toni Collette. I like the performances within this film. It looks really good as well. And you have some classic Bong Joon Ho themes within this movie that are not being pushed really hard within the film. Everything just has that natural pace to it, which makes it more thought-provoking but also entertaining throughout. I like Robert Pattinson within this film. I think he has a really good performance. Having that dual performance works within this film. Just takes along a little bit too much. It's unnecessarily long at times. It could have been really shortened down to really have it more of a tighter narrative. Coming in number 5, Mother. This was a very interesting film and the last movie I watched to complete my ranking for this video. It really focuses on what parents, especially the mother within this film, how far they will go to protect their child. And her son, she believed to be wrongly accused of murder, and she's going to extreme lengths to uncover what had happened. It leads her down a path that's very hard for her, but with Bong Joon Ho's imagery and his direction of characters and a really more thought-provoking, slowly thought out beginning of the film, everything just becomes more increasingly intense as the film goes along. I did think that the beginning moved incredibly slow for me. And it's not like I wanted to turn off the movie by any chance, or I said, oh, this was a bad Bong Joon Ho film. But now going back and thinking about it all, it has that setup that's very purposeful. The pacing in the beginning of the film is all for a reason, to where you can slowly start to peel back that relationship between mother and son, and then how far she will go. You have to establish that relationship, so everything else further in the film has its reasoning, and it all has that purpose. It is a beautifully directed film. It is a film that goes very far with looking at that mother and son relationship. It's very important between the two. Great performances throughout this movie. I was very surprised with Mother. Coming to number 4, Snowpiercer. Snowpiercer is an action-packed film, and I believe that this was the first Bong Joon Ho film I have seen. It is a film that does look at that separation of class, where all of the poorer characters are at the end of this train that is circling around Earth because of the outside world. Everything's frozen, but the front of the train is where everybody's rich, they're well fed, everybody's protected, and there's this uprising from the end of the train to the beginning of the train. And it is a very action-packed, brutal film, very different from what we've seen Bong Joon Ho do before. But he's able to implement his style of direction, his style of presenting themes throughout this film in a very thought-provoking way, but also be very entertaining. Chris Evans is great in this film. Very closed off at times in the beginning of the film, but we learn more about this character as he travels through the train and endures more action and bloodshed throughout this movie. I really like Snowpiercer. It was one of my favorite films of 2014, I believe it came out. And going back and watching all of his films, it's in line with how he covers his themes, how he presents them, how he establishes the characters, how he plays with the narrative throughout the movie, how his pacing works. It is your typical Bong Joon Ho style of film with a lot of American actors and a very action-packed, bloody film. I really like Snowpiercer. It's a great storyline and a great look at that separation of class and how far some will go to be equal and get what they deserve. Coming in at number 3, The Host. The Host was a first-time watch for me, much like other films on this list. And you'll probably recognize Song Kang-ho within this film. He also stars in Memories of Murder. He was also in Parasite as the father, the driver within that film. And this is a very emotional film that is one of like the closest things I have seen to like a Godzilla movie. When you look at what Godzilla represents, and when you look at this creature and what it represents with its pollution, you have that storyline that is focused on that creature throughout this film. But you have a storyline of a family that is trying to find a family member, and that right there feels very personal. See how far they will go. A lot of films from Bong Joon Ho does so well is that they challenge these family members and push them to their limits and see how far they will go to protect one another. And that's very apparent within The Host. You have a lot of haunting moments with this creature, a nice setup, very chilling setup for this creature. But as we learn more about the creature and the family and how far they will go and how they can fight off the creature, it's very interesting to see the way that it all plays out in the end of the movie. It's very personal for the family, but then you also have this creature feature to it that it also feels very chilling throughout. I really like The Host. Like I said, it was a first time watch for me. alongside Mother, Barking Dogs, Never Bite, Memories of Murder, and I really do appreciate Bong Joon Ho as a director. Song Kang-ho also gives a really good performance in this movie. He's someone that has to step up. He's a character that is more portrayed as being lazy in the beginning of the film, and people don't take him too seriously, but he has to rise to the challenge throughout this movie. You explore also how the government is reacting to it all, looking at the creature and watching it develop throughout the film. It takes a lot of elements from big creature films, like I said, Godzilla, and does it in a way that does feel very interesting and also very chilling throughout. Coming in second place, Memories of Murder. This film really blew me away. The opening shot is very haunting, and the way that they portray these detectives within this film, they rather just kind of beat the confession out of you. If they have any reasoning to believe that you are connected to this murder case in Korea, if they have any reason to be connected to you in this murder case in the 90s, they will just full on attack you and just hold you captive until they get that confession out of you. So you have this police force inability to track a killer down because of their more direct ways. And it's really hard to sympathize with these two detectives and their abilities and their reasoning for doing what they do. But then also you look at how motivated they are to find this killer that was killing women in the 90s. And although they really kind of push things to the limit, it's hard to sympathize with them. But also on the other hand, you look at their more direct ways of handling things means that they're motivated to track this killer down. But it looks more of that law enforcement's obsession with this case. And throughout this film, there are many different women that are murdered, and they believe that someone could be that killer. And they have all these deeper reasonings why. And they start to pinpoint things about music and when it's played, and women are being killed in the rain. It does make this movie feel very intense. It's very urgent when you learn about what is happening on nights that it rains and a certain song is being played on the radio. And by doing all of that, you just build this urgency throughout this film. But coming in first place, Parasite. I watched Parasite first when I started this ranking, as I've already seen it. I just wanted to have a refresher for this film. And when I saw it, I thought it was an okay film. I wasn't like blown away by it at all. When I watched it for the second time just recently, I understand why it won Best Picture. This is a really, really good movie. I love this film. It is a film that, much like Snowpiercer, has that separation of class. Looking at this family and how far they will go to implement themselves into this family's life, this richer family. They act like they don't know anybody, and that makes it so intense because you're afraid that something's going to happen along the way. They have to be very strategic with how they are inserting themselves into the family. They have to be very careful in what they say. It just has that low level of intensity, but it's also just really interesting to see how they could be very manipulative throughout this movie. And you see that family struggle, so it makes everything that they do have a solid reasoning for the way that they were able to get people fired. And the end just becomes a little bit too chaotic, and it makes all sense with how people want to hold on to certain positions. And there's a lot that the film is tackling at the end of it all, with big reveals about the house and the end of it with the father. There's a lot of things that do happen, and it never feels like it's overstuffed. It feels like there's just this nice pace to it, implementing new characters and new storylines throughout the film in the right moments. The pacing's really great. The performances are very strong. As we see these characters take on these jobs, I felt like every single scene was intense and urgent because they could be fired at any moment. They could learn just something very simple about these characters. And so I was like on the edge of my seat constantly once that son got that first job. Everything else that came after that, it was just, I felt this unease throughout the film. Bong Joon Ho, great job at implementing deeper themes into this film. The pacing's great, the performances are awesome. One of the best films I have seen in like the last decade, and it is just a strong film. And by watching this film first, I was afraid that no other film would come close to Parasite. And Memories of Murder did come pretty close. I started off the list very strong by watching Parasite, and even at his worst film, it's still a really good film. Bong Joon Ho is an incredible director, and Parasite is his best. So there you guys have it, all 8 Bong Joon Ho films ranked worst to best. How would you rank them? Let me know in the comment section down below, and stay tuned for more up and coming ranking videos like this. My name is Just Watches Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.